Hello, friends. We made another Levelhead level, finally. It's been a while. Over a year? I hadn't realized it had been that long. So I recently got back from vacation as I'm recording this. By the time this video comes out, it'll have been a couple weeks since I got back. I was in North Carolina, and I came back healthy this time, unlike my last vacation, so that was cool. I thought about making a level while I was on vacation, but that didn't end up happening. I didn't really get on my computer at all. Anyways, about the level. I was laying in bed, and suddenly a thought popped into my head. Like, what about a level that revolves around a waterfall and you just platform back and forth across the screen as you ascend? So that's the basic gist of it. I think this is the longest level and also biggest level that I've made so far. It took quite a while to make it. It took about 4 hours. Now I know there are people out there that spend way more time making levels, but just for reference, it took me about 4 hours to make this. I did come into it knowing a lot about what I wanted. I knew I wanted trees and branches, floating islands, and clouds. Also breakable rocks with gems in them. I got feedback on my last level about having more gems off path to help differentiate ribbon and shoe runs, so yeah. I hadn't super thought about enemies until I'd gotten to the process of making the level. Like, I knew I wanted Blobfush somewhere in the level because it kind of makes sense. If you're going up and ascending, they are flying fish, so to me, it made sense that they'd be in this level. But I also decided I wanted additional enemies as I went through the process of making the level. And I wanted those different enemies to kind of have rules to what their habitats are, so like where they would exist in the level. So there's flapjats at the base of the waterfall. It might seem a bit weird since this is the only place that they appear in the level, but I like them too much to change my mind and get rid of them. There are then vac rats on the floating islands, and then there's Blobfush that just kind of fly in circles wherever they are in the air. Also, this is the first time I noticed that I could set them to fly in circles. I'm sure I've seen it in other levels and just hadn't paid attention, but that was an interesting discovery. So these gates, they look pretty good for a waterfall, but they're not the most friendly. They're probably a large chunk of the reason why it took me so long to make this level. They don't play nice with things like gems or world elements like the leaves or the clouds, or enemies. And as I experienced later, they can lag like crazy when deleting or adding new ones as it adjusts all the patterns. Do I regret using them though? No, I do not. I still like them. So I started with the level layout. So that's the trees, the branches, the clouds, the floating islands that the player are going to use to ascend the waterfall. This took probably a quarter, maybe a third of the time I spent creating the level. I am testing like every few platforms to make sure the player could actually like jump up to them or jump over to them. And of course, if I couldn't make the jump or it didn't feel right, I would change it. Trees and branches were probably one of the other biggest struggles because of how the like leaf / tree blocks connect to each other. So we end up with a lot of trees made with background trunks and then leaves made of leaves. But I still had to be careful with the leaves because depending on the shape, you could end up with a small trunk spot, and I didn't want that in my leaves. Clouds were probably the easiest thing to make because I basically created a few shapes that I liked and then just copied and pasted them throughout the level as I needed them. Sometimes with minor adjustments. I don't really know what else to say about the level at this point, other than obviously this is very sped up since it took 4 hours to create. So it ranges from like 200% speed to 400% speed, depending on like what I'm building at the moment, or like when I'm testing. 400% speed with testing looks like wild and could make you like motion sick. So testing is at 200% speed, I think all the time, unless I'm possibly sitting still and just looking at something. But most of the building is at like 300 or 400% speed. Because I was not about to upload a 4-hour video of creating this level. That's not to say like I was building like all the time for 4 hours. Some of that time was like sitting there looking at the screen trying to figure out what I was going to do, but yeah. Still, it would have been a really long video if I didn't speed everything up significantly. So sometimes I test some kind of strange things. Like right here, for example, I'm trying to see what happens if I land on the small ledge under the tree. Does it really matter? No, because you can fall back down lower and get back up. It's not like you're gonna be stuck, but I don't know. I was still concerned about it and wanted to make sure you could get up onto the tree. Although honestly, it should probably be considered an achievement because it took me 3 or 4 tries to do it. I think the floating islands are one of my favorite parts of the level. I just like the way they look. And then once I add the back rat later, I like him even more because he's like a pop of color compared to all the like green and brown and then the blue of the background. I'm pretty happy with my tree shapes. Some of the ones on the floating islands are a little meh. They end up looking kind of like lollipops, like this one, as I try to hide the little wood piece that forms when the island is made that way. But the background ones, I think, look pretty good. I like that I have the diagonal branches going on, and I mean, trees come in all different kinds of shapes and sizes, so who cares if it's not perfect? Alright, so here I was concerned about the jump from the tree on the left to the jump to the tree on the right. Turns out I literally had nothing to worry about. So, yeah. I was concerned how I was going to like bridge that gap, but turns out it doesn't matter because you can make the jump. I just remembered, I actually ran out of memory on my computer as I was like recording and making this level. I hadn't archived like any of the YouTube videos that I've made so far, so there was a significant amount of data taking up my hard drive. So prior to like actually finishing and publishing the level, I had to move a whole bunch of old like video files onto my external hard drive so that I could finish making this level and video. I knew I was gonna have to do it eventually, but I just didn't expect it to happen in the middle of recording a video. I don't know why I didn't expect that, because that is the like biggest use of storage on my computer, because video files are multiple gigabytes large. At least my recordings tend to be. So that was a bit of a detour and an adventure. Here I'm using GR18's like ghost path thing, I don't actually know what it's called, to help like inform me of where I should put the platform. It is super helpful. Also, I use it a lot later when I'm placing gems in the level. Here's where our enemies first start to make an appearance. This is when I decided that I wanted enemies kind of like in habitats. So we have our first vac rat, and then we had the flapjacks down at the bottom. Something else to note, I didn't really notice this when I was building the level, but I kind of get distracted from what I'm doing in the middle of building. So like here I am adding shadows, but I was previously like working on like level layout. It happens quite a lot. This probably wasn't the first time it happened, and it's definitely not the last time. Sometimes it's helpful if I don't know exactly what I want to do next, but other times it's just a distraction. While it may look like I'm at the top of the level now, I actually expand this level twice? 3 times? 2 or 3 times to make it taller because I just wasn't ready to end the level yet. Had I ended it there, it would have taken significantly less time to make. So now the waterfall is much taller and we need a lot more platforms in order to get to the top. I do start copying stuff a lot more now that there is more in the level that has variation already, like the clouds and the branches. I do start copying a lot more of it and pasting it further up in the level. This obviously makes the process a lot faster, and also I know that those elements work together already if I'm copying like more than one branch that are like next to each other or more than one cloud. I know because earlier in the level I already tested that flow works together. That's not to say I'm not making adjustments still to the things I've copied, but there was definitely a lot more copying and pasting going on in this part of the level. Like, watch all this copy and pasting. We are using clouds that were previously used, and then we are going to use branches that were previously used, and then we're going to use another cloud that was previously used. So like this whole section of like 5 platforms is now just like reusing what already existed in a slightly different setup. And that very quickly helped me get back to the top of the level again, at which point I decided, nope, that is not going to be the end of the level, and I will have to further expand this level yet again. Also, this is the weirdest cloud shape in the whole level, and I kind of love it. So, level expansion again, and this is the point where I realized the goal should not actually be that high in the level. It looks weird. Also, I don't know that you could have reached the top the way it had been set, so it needed to move down. That also then changes like how the player would approach the goal. So we're making the goal platform, so it's just not sitting on some random floating 2-block branch that's in the middle of nowhere and not attached to anything. So I added a few extra like bonus gems in between branches like this, where there's no reason for you to go down there, but if you want to collect gems, you can feel free to go down there and get the larger gems that are worth more points. Here I kind of skipped ahead in the layout. I don't think I necessarily realized it at the time. I just wanted to build another floating island, so here I am building another floating island. This becomes, I believe, the last floating island prior to the end of the level. But currently there's no way to get to it since I neglected the platforms in between this and the lower branches. Adjustments happen, but that cloud is the final platform before the goal. So at this point, the layout is almost done. I just need to fill in this blank section that I left before. That's not to say it was easy. I actually struggled a lot with this one because of like bonking my head. It probably would have been easier to build had I actually done this in order, but oh well. Things had to get moved around to fix it and make it feel better, but it still got done. Yep, so here's what I was talking about with the bonking my head. So there's a lot of testing around this cloud and also like the branches around it. I guess all the platforms around it, because I didn't want to really bonk my head on the cloud and risk falling. I didn't want the jump from the branch to the cloud to feel yucky. So a bit of extra testing went into this section right here before I eventually decided, like, why don't I like move more stuff than just like one cloud at a time. Also, it's better with the floating island and that cloud up higher because the cloud was kind of low relative to the top of the goal, so that also kind of solved that problem. And at this point, the layout is complete. I also decided the waterfall was too wide, so I'm taking it in 1 block on each side. It mainly looked weird with the like pool at the bottom, but it also kind of felt like it was throwing off the balance of the level a little bit, so I think it looks better being 2 blocks smaller. And now it's time for gems, which is a long process. I didn't necessarily realize how long the level was until I was putting the gems in it, and I'm like, wow, this is really long. There's a lot of gems I have to add. Did I have to add all of these gems? No, I probably could have eliminated half of them and it would have been fine. But personally, as a player, I like to collect gems as I jump around. So I'm adding gems mostly where you're jumping, which in this level is in a lot of places. It didn't take me long to realize that gems and gates don't play nice, but then I also know that there's a way to get around it. So if you stick the gem on a path and you path it in there at high speed and make it stop at the end, you can make the gem and the gate overlap, kind of. It's also interesting that the gem ends up behind the gate. I don't know, I would have thought they would have ended up in front of the gate, but you know, whatever. Gem's there. I have not really used paths in the levels I've created in the past. I think I put Blobfish on them in one level and had them like move back and forth so that I could vary like their flight pattern some. But this is the first time using them for like a workaround like this. But I know this is common practice. At this point, I'm doing some testing and I realize that I have put the gems way too low. So it's time to go back and fix all of them according to how high GR18 actually jumps. Like, obviously you can vary your jump height, but some of these gem paths were very, very low. So I added gems in all of the rocks. So the small gems are in ones that are like on the outside. And then the blue gems are ones that are blocked by other rocks on all sides. So you'd have to break at least 2 blocks in order to get to a blue gem. And then it was back to adding gems for jumps. At this point, I realized like I should actually place the gems where they're supposed to be in the waterfall so that then when I go to path them, they're already there and I know where the path needs to end, and then I can just move them later afterwards and fix up the waterfall. Also at the end, I added a couple branches so that you could get the final blue and purple gem and then still get the top of the goal without having to like backtrack back to the cloud with probably some awkward package throw. I didn't make a comment on the checkpoint when I put it in, but given how long the level is, I felt like it kind of could use one. It's not to say that the level is hard or anything like that. I don't think it takes that long to beat either. It just kind of felt like it could use one. Also, I didn't know what to do with that kind of floating island branch because it didn't look good with a vac rat on it. So I ended up putting a checkpoint on it and it fit pretty well there. It does help if you're trying to do it with sprint speed, because I think the only spot you can get sprint speed in the level is at the very bottom, like in the waterfall pool. So obviously respawning at a checkpoint when you previously had sprint speed will maintain that sprint speed. So it can be helpful in that. Also, like, there is a chance of dying. Or if you just fall back down to the bottom and don't feel like climbing back up, you can just respawn at the checkpoint and continue upwards. Don't mind these 2 just random paths here. I added them earlier thinking about like using them as a way to like decorate the level, like as branches, or the vines as actual like decoration. They do go away. I do end up using vines as decor later. They were just kind of there as a mental note of, hey, remember you can use these things if you want to. I was struggling to decide what to do with some of these gems here. So you can either run off the cloud down to the lower branch, or you can jump from the cloud up to the like next higher branch. And I decided, since the lower branch is already going to have the bonus gem, that just leave it as that and direct the jump gems up to the higher branch. I felt like the bottom needed some gems just because there weren't any. This was a bit of a struggle. I wasn't sure where to put them. Alright, and now it's time for the adventure of using paths to path the gems into place. I didn't realize at first how the copying worked, I expected it to just copy the path and paste the path, but it copies the path attributes and pastes the path attributes. So at first we were doing this manually, and then I ended up seeing if I could copy and paste the path attributes, discovered it worked, and it made it go significantly faster. And then I used that copying and pasting later when doing the vines, once I start adding those. And here's where I discovered the copy and pasting. Look how much faster this goes. Not that it was actually that slow before, like I was doing it pretty quickly, but it is significantly faster with the copy and pasting of the attributes. So now is the time for vine decorations. So mostly I'm using them underneath the floating islands. They do go on a few of the larger trees. They're just there to spruce up the level a little bit. And here's where I realized I did not make this jump great. So, had to fix that. At this point, you can make it up with the package. Actually, before you could have made it up, I believe, with the package 2 and sprint speed. But it's not super player friendly, so we made it so if you broke all of the blocks, that you could still make the jump without needing to actually use the package. I am a big proponent of testing, so like making sure in this case that the player, no matter their playstyle, in theory, should be fine. That's not to say I can play like everyone's playstyle, but thinking about how different players will go about the level and how it will feel for them. In some places, I'm less concerned about things, like right there, for example, there's 2 ways to get up onto that branch. Even though one isn't necessarily the most player-friendly, coming up from underneath, you can still go around and get back up if you don't feel like making the jump from the other block. I'm actually a tester by job, like my day job is a QA engineer, so some of that test mindset comes from that, and thinking about then how other people use things, or in this case play levels. So I'm concerned about someone who wants to go and collect all the gems. I don't want to punish them for making that decision, especially because gems are a reward. Someone who just casually plays through the level and doesn't necessarily go for gems or anything, just kind of goes through the platforms, and their experience is mainly how the level was built around in the first place. I do also test it with sprint speed, although I wasn't the most concerned about people with sprint, trying to play it fast, because they'll figure out a way to go fast if they want to go fast. I also gave them the package early, so anyone who wants to do package jump shenanigans can feel free to do so. Whether or not it ends up being helpful in going fast in the level, I don't know, not my thing. And now it's time for the blobfish. So at first, I was just gonna have them go left and right or up and down depending on where they were. Then I discovered, hey, they also don't play nice with the gates, just like pretty much everything else. So eventually that got changed. I tried putting it on a path, realized that, they don't maintain their flight pattern thing. Once they're on a path, they fly according to the path. And then I discovered circles. And ooh, did I like the circles. So the decision was made. All of the Blotflesh in the level are gonna fly in circles. So it was during this test that I realized that the Blotflesh fly at significantly different speeds depending on their radius. I don't know what exactly the speed number is. It kind of seems like the speed in which it will complete a circle. So I had to increase the speed of the ones that only had a radius of 2 so that they would fly at closer to the same speed as one that's going like a radius of 4, for example. Otherwise, it just felt like they were so slow in comparison. So the last big thing that I wanted to like fix, I didn't like how zoomed in the camera was. I still don't know that I super like how it ended up. I kind of would have liked it zoomed out a little further. At first, I kind of wanted it zoomed out all the way, but it doesn't actually include the whole level of it zoomed out all the way. Also, I had to take into account the pathing in gems, and I didn't want it like super obvious that I had to path in gems. Some of them, like, that I add later, you end up seeing, and I'm fine with it. But some of the other higher up ones that you could see when the camera was further zoomed out, I didn't really want that. Like, these ones, I don't care that you could see that they were pathed in. Otherwise, there was, like, no possible way to add them there, and I just wanted some extra gems. Plus, the way I eventually path them, I don't think it actually looks that bad. So here is the sprint speed test. It is by no means pretty, but you can complete the level with sprint speed, and that's kind of all I cared about. Like I said before, people that want to go fast will figure out a way to go fast if they want to go fast. I just kind of wanted to see if it was possible. I mean, it would have been weird if it was impossible, but there are some parts that felt better than others. There was a part that I thought about adjusting, which you'll kind of see, I think, at the end of this test, but I didn't end up adjusting because it had to do with changing the leaf layout of like a branch, and when I deleted the one that was impeding my movement, which is actually this branch right here, it exposed like the tree block, like tree trunk block, and I didn't like that, so it had to stay. Aesthetics went over there. But yeah, at this point, I am done with the level. So then it was the final playthrough to clear it. Let's clear this level and get it published. Let's try that again. Honestly, the hardest enemy to deal with is this second flapjack right here. He do kind of be a pain in the butt. Sure, we'll take the purple. Why not? Okay, you can still get out of there. I don't know why I was concerned about it. I've probably tested it like 5 times. Checkpoint, checkpoint, checkpoint. Useful for if you fall down or if you die. All the extra like background branches that I added definitely help the look. Avoid you for now, since you're out of the way. Wow, this level feels really long now. Granted, I should know. There was definitely a lot of scrolling back and forth as I was making it, between the bottom and the top. Alright, we're at the top. Woo! Level cleared. Let's ship it. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Level code is in the description if you would like to play it. Consider liking and subscribing, and hopefully I will see you next time.